was Centerman from Nina Simone's 1965 album Pastel Blues. It comes in at number 84 on our list of the best albums of the 60s. It was ranked number 8 in 1965 and is number 805 overall. It was Nina Simone's 8th studio album, released on October 1st, 1965, and it peaked at 139 on the Billboard Top 200. It's also notable for being on Alicia Keys' list for her top 25 albums of all time, so you've got that. And Rolling Stone voted Nina Simone as the 29th greatest singer of all time. So I did not know much about Nina Simone going into this. The one thing I was hoping to get out of this was to find out if she actually did at some point take a dump on a microphone, as Lauryn Hill said, rapped about in, what was it, Ready or Not, back in with the Fugees.
Oh, yeah.
I did not read anything about her defecating on a microphone, so I think that was probably a metaphor from Miss Hill about how she's just going to own the microphone, I guess.
You're real deductive there, Matt. Real deductive.
I am. Yes. I wanted to do a complete, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to be factual,
He's real deep.
So Nina Simone was from North Carolina. She's from a poor family. She's she has several siblings. She was like one of 8 or something like that. She started learning how to play the piano around 3 or 4 years of age. And she was really growing up in her church. There was a woman that went to her church that heard her play and took her in to teach her basically to be a classical pianist. And that's really where her foundation lies, is in classical music. It's what she was trained in for many years, and that's what she really aspired to. Even when she was doing more jazz and pop and soul, R&B type music, really classical music was her first love, and she always tried to incorporate that into her music. She did attend Juilliard for about a year and a half after she graduated from high school, and then applied for a scholarship to attend the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, but she was denied for that position for what she always suspected was due to racial discrimination, because she always felt that she had the chops to be there, but because she was black, she said that's the main reason why she did not get in. So she ends up starts playing some clubs in Atlantic City, and she was doing more pop jazz type music, basically just to pay the bills. And it wasn't until one of the owners of the club that she was in Atlantic City, when he told her, you really need to start singing. You'll make more money doing that. We can get more people in here. And so I found that fascinating, because I don't know about you guys, but her voice is just tremendous. I didn't really know what I was going to get into when I heard her voice. And I just found it very, very surprising that after all those years growing up, all she was really doing was playing the piano. One day an owner of a club comes out and says, you should really start singing. And that's the voice that she comes out with. So I found that to be very interesting, that one of the signature aspects of her sound was something that, again, she wasn't ever trying to really she didn't start off with doing that. That wasn't part of her ultimate goal, really. She's playing this music, and at that point she decides to change her name, because she was actually born Eunice Kathleen Wayman, but she wanted to change her name because she did not want it to get back to her family that she was playing, quote unquote, the devil's music. So she changed her name to Nina Simone. Nina came from a nickname that her previous boyfriend had called her, a variation of Nina. And Simone came from the name of a French actress, Simone Signoret, who was in a movie that I guess was appealing, or that touched Nina Simone, and she thought that was a good name to go by.
Yeah, she's a famous French actress.
There you go, Josh. Yeah, I'd never heard of her, so Josh would know. So she's playing some clubs. She meets a police vice detective, Andy Stroud, in 1961, and they were married shortly after. And it's kind of interesting. For some reason, he was a vice cop. He was a really menacing individual that scared the hell out of people, just a very intimidating figure. But he was the one that he retired from the police force, and he became Simone's manager. and he was the one that kind of somehow he had connections in the music industry and started, shopping her around and getting her to play more gigs, including playing her Dream performance in Carnegie Hall in 1963. So he worked her hard. He was a workhorse. He was very demanding of her, and they did have a daughter together. And he, of course, surprise, surprise, was also abusive, both physically and emotionally, towards Simone for many, many years. Simone herself could be confrontational in the studio and was difficult to work with, and she would go to playing, and she expected audiences to behave more like classical music audiences, being very quiet, very still. But she would be known to actually stop playing and berate a patron if that they were talking, or if they were they were conducting themselves in any way that wasn't according to what, to her, what they should be doing. So there's actually some clips of this, of her like scolding, "Sit down. Yeah, you sit down," like stop, like, and it's awkward and people don't know whether to laugh or not, but she's just very, very serious, yelling at someone, telling them to sit down. So she could be difficult to work with some of the other musicians. But she really got into, and we'll get into the album in just a second, but I also need to touch on this because you can't really talk about Nina Simone without referring to her very, very strong political ideology, being a very strong, prominent member in the civil rights movement, much more so Malcolm X than Martin Luther King. She famously told Martin Luther King Jr., "I am not nonviolent." So she was, in later years, was quite militant, and said that if it wasn't for music, she felt that she would be dead, because she would be taking up arms against people and probably would have been shot. But a huge song. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, whoa, that's intense.
Yes. Yeah. So that kind of comes in later, but she did have a song called "Mississippi Goddamn." It wasn't on this album, but that was a very strong protest song in response to the assassination of Medgar Evers and the Birmingham church bombing in 1963 that killed 4 young black girls. And it's one of those things. Of course, DJs refused to play it. This was a time when a lot of African-American artists were trying to, play by the rules, not get into too much trouble. But she really bucked that trend, and she said, "Nope, this is wrong. I'm going to sing about it." And even later on in her life, she felt like because of her strong political stances, she suffered commercially. And it seemed like there was even it's interesting, in the latter part of her life, there was almost some regret, for that. I'm not so sure if it's probably more so regret that that's just the system that she was in, rather than I shouldn't have done that, because she was very proud of being black, and she felt that her mission to try to, put passion into her music and to make other blacks curious about who they are and where they came from. So that's a little history of Miss Simone. Where were you guys coming into this in terms of your knowledge of this album and or Nina Simone? John, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Oh, I know Nina Simone real. She's an icon, and I knew a lot of the songs on this already, but pretty well aware of Nina Simone coming in.
Mm. Yeah, I knew of her, but I don't think I knew specifically what songs. I'm sure I've heard some of these songs before as well. And probably some of her other work as well, but it was really good listening to this album all the way through.
Yeah, and like I said, I knew her name really, and and I saw that she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018, and Lauryn Hill came out of the woodwork to perform for that, because I knew that she's Nina Simone was a big influence on Lauryn Hill. So, but that's really it. So this was a pretty much a fresh listen for me. So, what did you guys? What were your impressions of the overall album, Josh?
Oh, this album was fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to it. I'm surprised it's not higher on this list. I'm going to start questioning the overall list more and more as we go deeper onto this album. I'm going to bring that up in my album as well. And I mean, some of these songs are, all-time classics, like Strange Fruit and Sinner Man primarily. And I mean, I enjoyed every song on this album. I liked the intensity that this album had, but it was also like sad and soulful and just, and like you said, Matt, her voice is amazing. I really enjoyed listening to this.
All right, John?
Oh, this album's phenomenal. It's probably my
Mm,
favorite album we've listened to yet. It's I mean, I love any what you would consider to be R&B or soul singing, right? And so this isn't neatly fit in any of them, but for those that haven't heard Nina Simone but are more familiar with, I guess, more modern music, the best way I would describe her is sort of an evolutionary Mary J. Blige would be the person who I would sort of describe her as, because they have that same immense dripping feeling in all of their songs that I would describe, in a vulnerability mixed with like this very dominant, assertive personality on the other side, which is so hard to sing vulnerable songs and then sing strong songs that don't sound cliched or like you're putting on an act, right? So it's just,
yeah.
it's incredible. And this album, I mean, this album is just dripping with sex. I mean, every song sounds like sex, sounds like relationships. And not, and when I say sex, it's not like sex in the way you're thinking. It's more like in the context of a relationship, in loss and longing. And I haven't even talked about, a lot of these songs are live on the album, and you can't even tell because they're just incredible. So,
Well, actually, that was
yeah.
something that I kind of was. I would, because it's not listed as a live album. I didn't see any information that says, "Oh, this was recorded in." I mean, in Spotify, it says every song is live in New York, but it's not considered a live album, and I didn't see any notation of where it was recorded. So I'm not sure about that. It doesn't. You're right, John. It doesn't sound live, and the
No.
only reason that I would have thought that it was live is because Spotify says that for every song it's live. So I don't know where that's coming from, whether that's actually true or not.
What, that it's
But
a live album?
yes.
Okay. I mean, we can certainly look that up, but I was always under the impression that this was a live
Yeah,
album. So.
I didn't see. I mean, like I said, I saw that on Spotify, but I didn't see it anywhere in the you know, it's a studio album is the way it was listed and the way I read it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It still sounds great, right?
So, I mean, this is the only Nina Simone album we talk about, right? I think.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, based on the strength of this album, and she has a lot of other albums. They
Yes.
also have to be good, I would think.
Spoiler alert, they are. They're fantastic, yeah.
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 Did she play the piano on this as well, Matt?
Yes,
Since
she
you
does.
said she was.
Yes, she does.
Okay. So she
Yeah,
sings
she's
and plays the piano?
Correct. Yeah. She's
Nice.
a phenomenal artist, right? Like, and that's, I think, because I didn't know that, right? Like, coming into this, my naivete, right? I was like, oh, she's a singer, right? She's kind of along the lines of like, Billie Holiday or Bessie Smith, which, yes, but she was, like I said, she started off as a classical pianist, and that's really what she wanted to be doing. But that's why I was just like, holy crap, she wasn't even singing or didn't do any lessons. This is just, because her voice is so, it's raw, it's emotional. There's stuff on here that it's haunting, right? And it's just, and you don't even need to know what she's singing about. Like Strange Fruit is a great example, right? Because surprise, surprise, I listened to this album several times, and it took me like the fourth listen before I was like, oh, what's going on
How could
here,
you
right?
not know what Strange Fruit is about?
Exactly.
It literally is about making love to someone who's a complicated person who you love and you're having great sex with. It's also
Strange Fruit?
It's
No,
also
no, Strange Fruit's not about that.
Strange Fruit is
I'm
not about
sorry.
that. That is the opposite of that.
I apologize. Scrape everything
Unless you
that I
have
said.
sex in a really weird way.
No. I apologize. I misspoke. I misheard. I'll go backwards and talk about that later.
But
Let
you're
me take it
still,
back here. Yeah.
but your initial reaction, John, is still accurate because yes, I absolutely should have. But it just goes to show when I listen to it first, I'm going for the music first. And I don't think I listen. I'm more likely to listen to lyrics if I have my headphones in, I'm out for a walk or whatever. And I wasn't doing that the first couple times I listened to this. But even though I didn't know the lyrics, which A Strange Fruit is about, it's lynching, right? It's and it was actually a song that Billie Holiday did in 1939. So almost, 25 years prior to this. And and it's just this haunting, stark graphic portrayal of lynching. And it's horrible, right? It's just, but there's this part towards the end where her voice does this long sustained note. It's like this moan, and it descends in a very slow fashion. And you just know, you can just hear the pain. So even if you didn't know what this was about, her voice is just tremendous. And I really think that for me, that the standout tracks. I mean, the opening track, "Nobody Be My Husband," which was written by her husband, as kind of like an homage to it's almost like a black chain gang prison song. It's just hand claps and her singing. And I thought that was a fantastic song, and everything else is very good on here. But the last two songs, "Strange Fruit," which is just a very slow, song about very descriptive of a lynching scene, and then the final song, "Sinner Man," which I think that's my favorite song that we've listened to. So that is a fantastic song.
I thought
the
same
driving
thing.
piano, the hand clapping, the minor chords that are kind of come in there in the middle, the syncopation that she's doing. What a great song. I could listen to that over and over again and never get sick of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can't endorse it enough. People need to go listen to it if they hadn't heard it. Matt, the one question I had though, are these original songs to her, or are there a lot of covers? Or
no,
I didn't look into that. So.
No, she didn't write any of these. A lot of these are "Be My Husband" was written by Andy Stroud. "Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out," the second song, was written by. A lot of these are written in the 20s by these vaudeville blues artists. Jimmy Cox is the writer of that song, and that song was actually later on. That's been covered a lot. It was on the Derek and the Dominoes album, and it was also on Eric Clapton's Unplugged album. So that was a song that Clapton really, really liked.
You'll see sounds that are similar to other songs, like, for example, "Trouble in My Mind" sounds like "Mama Said There'd Be Days Like These." It's like you can actually kind of hear it at different times if you're familiar with that song, because they're like standard traditional songs in terms of, and just being reworked to have new lyrics and new frameworks. Yeah. So
yeah, a lot of these you can kind of look up, like the songs themselves have their own Wikipedia page, and it just lists all the people that have covered these songs and different in different artists like that. Jeff Buckley covered a number of these. He covered "Be My Husband," he covered "Strange Fruit." So but no, she didn't. I don't really. Well, she arranged. I'm sorry, she did. "Sinner Man" was a traditional song. It's like a very biblical theme. Essentially about God coming to collect from this sinner.
And just so you know, that was the song I was referencing, by the way, that I thought Matt was talking about, as opposed to. Right. So I heard it differently, so I apologize for making that mistake.
Yeah. So that's. So wait, you thought "Sinner Man" was about a dude?
No. I know what they're about. I heard you say "Sinner Man" instead of "Strange Fruit." So when I was going on and on before, I was going on and on about "Sinner Man," not about "Strange Fruit." Yes. So just want to clarify
but
that was
yeah, that's a traditional song, and Nina Simone, she's credited as arranging that, but that's the only thing that she's credited with actually writing on here. But yeah, a lot of these songs are kind of taken from from the 20s. Billie Holiday wrote "Tell Me More" and then some. So I agree with you guys. I really like this. It's a fairly easy listen. And there's some jarring moments, that are kind of, so it's almost like it goes on and off. It goes like sad song, happy song in terms of the melody, in terms of the beat, right? It goes, somber, upbeat. So it kind of ebbs and flows like that. But yeah, it's great. And a third of the album is the last song, which is it's fantastic. Yeah. So, and that's been used in a lot of movies. John, that was used in Homicide. I didn't realize
it was.
That.
Yep.
It was in the Homicide episode.
Nina Simone was used a couple different times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recognize some of this stuff from samples and rap songs too.
Yes, and that was "Strange Fruit." I think Kanye and Talib Kweli used that. I mean, that's there's a couple of songs like "Strange Fruit" was actually he's talking about Rolling Stone early. Rolling Stone, rated the top 40 protest songs, and that was one of the first ones, which is just amazing because when Billie Holiday did that, she did it at tremendous risk to herself. But she felt like it was that important to perform that. So. Wow, what a crazy! And Time Magazine called it one of the 100 best songs of the century. So it's a very poignant song for sure.
And hard to argue with that.
Well, and one thing that I want to add too is that this was an album that had a definitive Black identity at a time when the music charts and what was being written about a lot of times was not that overt. We talked about the Supremes before, right? And the album that we covered from the Supremes and this album are only separated by about 10 months, right? But the ethos of what was being built with the Supremes, right, was to be as accessible as possible. And this album, in terms of the lyrics and Nina Simone's sort of life story, was definitely not to play to a crossover. If you were going to go with her, you were going to go with her, and you certainly can. I mean, you got three guys right now, some 40 plus years later, talking about how much it moved us, right? But she wasn't going to compromise on it, and I think that really does make it stand out, because it's universal human emotions, but definitely grounded in sort of an uncompromising idea of who's singing it and what she stands for.
Yeah. No, and she just, at the end of the day, she just picked really good songs to record, and with her piano chops and her voice, she made it her own. Big thumbs up here. I really like this, and this would certainly encourage me to check more of her stuff out. Sounds like the same for you guys as well.
Yeah, I think this is the best album we've listened to on the list, in my opinion. And this is one I'll be revisiting probably from time to time, just in the rotation in shuffle or whatever.
I would agree. It's my favorite album we've done so far. I don't know if I've sat and actually listened to a full Nina Simone album, because once again, when I was listening to this stuff before, it wasn't designed to be digested in albums, right? It was just songs and, collections and stuff like that to get a vibe. But it was very cool to get a feel for a full album from Nina Simone.
And she's got plenty of both live and studio albums, to choose from. She was putting stuff out left and right. But just a quick postscript on her. She did continue to play through the 60s, but got really into the civil rights movement, affiliating herself with, the Black Panthers Party. She was neighbors, actually, with Malcolm X. And so her daughter and Malcolm X kids were all very close. But she did get very depressed. She had thoughts of suicide, wrote of wanting to kill her husband and kill other people, and then later on I found that she actually toured with Bill Cosby. So I found that to be interesting, that you do like a comedian, with the artist like this, in two very different, kind of camps. That must have been an interesting audience to perform to. But she did eventually leave her husband. She moved to Liberia, and brought her daughter out there. But she started struggling. Needed money. She lived in Europe pretty much for the rest of her life after living in Liberia, because she never wanted to return back to what she referred to as the United Snakes of America. She definitely had a lot of resentment for what was going on over here. And then in the late 80s, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Which kind of explained a lot of her erratic behaviors and the way that she treated. I mean, she became abusive towards her daughter as well, sadly enough. But she did continue to play. She continued to tour, made some money. But she did die, I believe, in 2003. And 2 days before her death, she was actually awarded an honorary degree from the Curtis Institute, the very institution that denied her scholarship opportunity back when she was trying to make it. So really interesting story, very sad. I did watch there's a documentary on Netflix that I did watch about her that came out about 5 years ago called What Happened to Miss Simone. So it's very interesting. But it's also very sad. She was a very troubled individual who went through a lot. Her husband treated her horribly. She suffered from mental illness. She got really wrapped up in the civil rights movement. Tried to do what she could in terms of promoting the rights of Black people and minorities in the country. But her career suffered because of it. She wouldn't get played. People wouldn't want her to perform. She became like an outcast in a lot of ways. But she did influence a hell of a lot of artists.
I mean,
so yeah.
You can, if you're not familiar and you're going with comparisons from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, right? Lauryn Hill, Mary J. Blige, Amy Winehouse. You can't listen to any of those people without seeing how they were directly influenced by Nina Simone albums. There is 0.0%. I mean, track 7, Ain't No Use, sounds like it could have been cribbed for Back to Black by Amy Winehouse.
Yeah.
That's how similar it lines up. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So big thumbs up. It's an excellent album, and I'm going to try to listen to some more. I just don't know where to start because Best Ever Albums doesn't have her on any more top 100 lists. So I guess I'll just have to roll the dice.
Dig into the stacks, you coward.
Right on.
Future,
All right,
future in the attic pick maybe. If you find something good.
Yes.